I'm Lisa. I'm a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day, write them down, commit them to my sponsor, and don't eat in between meals no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life. I was just looking for a meeting last week and came to this meeting, and now I'm here speaking. So, but that's the program, right? And it's also a time in my life where I probably need to be doing this, and usually my higher power takes care of me. So, when I get out of the way, so here I am, all the way from Toronto, Canada. And this is the time of year when my dry date is coming up and my abstinent date just passed. It was on February 3rd. And so this is kind of always the time of year for me when I'm thinking back to like what I was like many years ago. And from an early age, I ate. I remember my mom took me to Sears, and they used to have a big counter that sold a lot of sugar stuff. And I would not be listening in the store, and my mom would take me there and get me a bag of stuff so I would behave. And so I kind of learned at an early age, food can be used for things other than just, eating for nourishment. And I have that memory, and I loved that. That was like one of my favorites right till the end. And then I just always used food. When I was home, I remember when I was, 9 or 10 years old, I started eating a big bowl of something that you get at movies, that I would make at home, and I'd put like a pound of fat on it and that's what I liked. I love grease. And it would give me comfort when I was home alone and I was frightened. And I started, at that time I started sneak eating. And my mom we had a playroom in the basement, and I would sit there, and there was a cupboard beside me. I would throw like food wrappers and cans and whatever like in there. And every few months she would find it and she would say something, and I'd go, okay. And then I'd do it again. And she would keep saying things to me, but nothing ever changed. I just kept doing it. And she kept, she played along. And I also started I thought I was getting fat, and, my parents were really hard on me about what I looked like. And it's interesting because my son is now the age that I was when I started having the body issues came along with the eating. And, I look at him and he's just what a 13-year-old kid looks like, right? Sometimes they're a little pudgier. And actually I looked at him last night, he's leaned out because he's grown taller. And like, that's what happened to me. But I felt fat, and I look back and I go, oh my God, you weren't fat. But boy, I felt fat. I felt uncomfortable. I had that feeling I just felt uncomfortable. I didn't feel pretty enough. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel enough of anything. And so I ate to fill that hole. And then when I was in high school, I went to a high school dance and I discovered booze. And so I would drink in public and I would kind of eat in private. No one ever really saw my eating, but I would gain weight. And, the first time, and it's interesting, my mom's story is that I asked to go, but I think she took me to Weight Watchers when I was 12 or 13 years old. Like, I'm pretty sure I didn't ask to go to Weight Watchers, but she says I did. So I don't know. We have different stories, but all I know is I went to Weight Watchers and I did it. And, I lost a little bit of weight, and then I went off it. And then I would gain weight again. And I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, I went to another weight loss program, lost a ton of weight. My dad was so proud of me. So he bought me a fancy new wardrobe, which is, was amazing. And I got spoiled because I'd lost weight and I was pretty. And that's what I felt like, that I was pretty all of a sudden. And my dad and I, back then, we had a very adversarial relationship, and he was really hard on me I always used to feel like he almost just wanted a show pony that he could dress me up and take me out. And that wasn't the case, but it was how I felt. They were hard on me though about how I looked and what I ate and stuff. Those are the facts. And I went away to school, and by this time I was 18 or 19, and I had just started putting on weight and I couldn't lose it anymore. And I went away to university, And when I was in second year university, I think I went to that was when I tried Nutrisystem. And, where you get the food. And so I would get the food, but I would be like, well, I don't know why it's not working. Well, it wasn't working because I would get the food and then I would add my own stuff to it. So it's not going to work if you don't follow what they say. But, I'm an addict. Like, I lie to myself. My eyes lie when I look at food. And if that's a 4-ounce portion, my eyes will look at it. That's a 4-ounce portion. It's probably 8 or 10 ounces, right? My eyes lie to me, right? I can't be trusted. And so I wasn't really following, the plan. And my dad wasted a lot of money on that, but, I just kept going and playing along with that game, and it didn't really work. But we always knew, and I was getting bigger and bigger. And by this time I was probably about 230 pounds and I just couldn't lose weight, and I would drink on the weekends and I would drink when I was out, and I would do that in public. And then behind the scenes, I was just eating and I was binging. And I never really purged, maybe the odd time, but just for me, I was like a binge eater. And I just kept gaining weight. And I started working at a magazine in I think it was 1994 or 1993. And everybody that worked at this magazine was in a 12-step program of some kind. And it was called the Guide to Pathways, a Guide to Health Through Balanced Living. And they had advertisements in the back for people who dealt with all kinds of 12-step programs and therapy and all this. And my mom actually found a therapist in there. And she called this woman. This is maybe one of the best things my mom ever did. She called this woman and checked her out and said, listen, I checked this out in the magazine you work out, and she sounds like a good woman to talk to. And she gave me the number and said, it's up to you what I do. And so I called this woman, and she was in OA. And she was running, she had gone to the US for treatment and had come back, and she had started this therapy. And so I joined that group, and there was a food plan. And as part of the food plan, I didn't drink. So it was a really interesting time. And I wasn't eating sugar, and I was still eating flour. And she introduced me to some of the concepts of 12 steps programs, but it was therapy. It wasn't, so there was no fellowship. There was no steps. There was no traditions. There were some prayers and a few things. But it wasn't a fellowship. And when I went home at Christmas, I think I started, my father and I got into it, and we had a fight. And I think I started drinking first, and then I started eating. And 3 months later, I sat in that woman's office, and I don't know where this came from. I said, I think I've gone as far as I can until I quit drinking. And so I left there, and I continued to drink for another year. So that was March 12th, 1995, I got sober. And the next year was really focused on me getting sober. And at the end of that year, I actually cared enough about myself that I went to a doctor for the first time in years, and was shocked that I was like 288 pounds. And that started my next year of being like, I really need to do something about this. This is not, and I tried everything. I had the woman who brought me into AA. I had met her in another therapy group for food that I was in. And I don't know how she got sober and abstinent at the same time. And God bless her. I don't know how she did that. And she shared her food plan with me, and she eyed her food. She measured it at the beginning, and now she eyed it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And so I did that, right? And you start out, you get this, like, maybe, the thing you boil in water, you get this much, right? This is what 4 ounces looks like. I'm like, okay. And within a week, what had been a little, bit in the middle of my plate was a full plate. Because my eyes lie to me. I cannot be trusted. I need the 4.0. So that didn't work. I think I went back to Weight Watchers. Like, I did so many things. I was just looking for everything. And meanwhile, my very first sponsor in AA, who had moved away after 3 months, found GreySheet in Paris. And she started 12-stepping me, because what she said to me was, I knew you weren't a fat person. And bless her heart, she was right. And she just waited. And I remember the first time she told me about it, I was like, absolutely not. And I called the woman who was my sponsor today, and she started talking about it, and I was like, yeah, there is no way I'm not doing this. No, this is not possible. And so I didn't even try it. I had a gray sheet. It had been explained to me. And I remember that woman who was my first gray sheet sponsor, when she explained it to me, and she was staying with me when she had 12-stepped me. And she cleaned my kitchen up while I was at work. And when I came home, and she just said, well, I couldn't weigh and measure in that. It was a mess. And I was so offended that she did that. Now I get it. I don't weigh and measure in a mess. Like, I have to clean. Even I go upstairs. If my kids have been in the kitchen doing something, I got to clean it all up. I got to get everything out of there. It has to be, but oh my God, I was so insulted that she would do that. And so she left, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And then I was going to OA meetings again, and I sat in a meeting, and it was just before Christmas, and I would be going home again, and I was sitting in this meeting, and this guy walked in, and he sat down, and and this was at the time when they were just stopping the food plans, and and I remember he said, I slipped last night. I ate this, sugary thing, but I got right back on this morning, and I'm still abstinent. And my AA brain went, that's not right. I don't go to a bar and have a shot and then come to the rooms the next day and go, I'm still sober. Like, I drank. And I was like, yeah, that's not right. And so I knew OA was not for me, because that wasn't going to work. And then I went home for Christmas, and I came back, and I was at work, and I had a meal, and it was nothing like, it would have been considered, abstinent on the food plan I was doing at the time. It was like fast food from the food court at work. And I just remember sitting at my desk, and I was really tired, because I would get tired after eating. And I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And I called my first Gray Sheet sponsor, and I said,
Lisa, 3 minutes.
Okay. I said, would you sponsor me? And she said, yes. And that started my journey. That was like mid-January. And I lost my abstinence a couple of times because I put a boy in front of my abstinence. I didn't call my sponsor when I should have called my sponsor. And on February 3rd, 1997 is my abstinent date. And, since that time, and I remember when I first got to AA, I'm like, how do you get married without drinking? And then it was like even worse in Gray Sheet. Like, I can't have the wedding, the big thing they eat. I'm like, I can't do this. And what about when I go to this? And I didn't even have kids, didn't think I ever would. And I'm like, well, what about when they get married? Like, and it was just like so much in the future. And it's like, I got married. I've had one child. We adopted another. I just lost my father. I've lost my brother. I've lost many jobs. I've had many highs and lows, and I've never needed to eat. It just, and in fact, at a time like right now, and I've been thinking about it because it's basically a month ago now that my father passed. I take great comfort in weighing and measure my food in times like this, because it's like the consistent thing I do, right? I write my food down. I call my sponsor. I have these 3 meals that I do. There's a lot more. And my sponsor, when I called her, when my father passed, she's like, keep your food really simple. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I've got it. Like, I think we can buy like a lot more pre-made food now. And I'm like, I got it. I'm good. And I was taken care of. And then the really interesting thing that happened, because my mom still gets funny about my 25 years later, my parents are still funny about it. And I'm like, no, this is what I do. And, everybody brings food. Somebody dies. Everybody wants to bring food. And there was only 2 of us too. So there wasn't. And so there was a lot. I just said to my mom, don't worry about it. Just tell them to bring what they want. They like helping. I've learned that, right? I've learned that in Gray Sheet, right? People like helping. If you ask them for help, they will help. They want to bring food. It's really to make them feel better. That's fine. Just accept it. But there was 2 of my mom's friends who actually, they asked about me and what I do. And they brought the best protein that they just put it in a pan and baked it in the oven. And I was just like, oh my God, that is phenomenal. And I got to eat it for like 2 or 3 days. It was one of my favorite proteins. And I just, like, so people can do it if they want. And I was just amazed that they did that, right? And my mom makes it seem so complicated. It's really not complicated. You take the protein, you open the package, put it in the oven, and you bake it, right? Like, and it was delicious. I loved it, and it made my life easier. And so but I'm also grateful that I've learned to just let my mom be. Thank you, Linda. After 25 years, I'm not going to change her. And she's of a different generation. And I've learned that, through working the steps. And, I'm grateful for that. And God, 15 minutes is not a lot of time. But I will say, as I said, I've been through a lot. And all of it has taught me that picking up food is never going to make anything better. And I'm a better wife and a mother and an employee and a daughter. My father and I mended fences before long time ago. And there was nothing left that I needed to say to him. He knew I loved him, and I know he loved me. And that's because of the program and the steps. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I think that's it. Thank you.